Hello and welcome into the Pole Position, your first source for news and information in the world of NASCAR and motorsports. Garth McMahon's here alongside Tommy Poole, and we have reluctantly let Andrew Moore back, testing him for one more show.
It's great to be back, Garth.
I'm sure it is. Andrew, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Getting ready to talk about some NASCAR stuff, as we always do on this show.
Stop that accent. And Tommy's on here as well. Tommy, how are you today?
Doing well. How about yourself, Garth?
I'm hanging in there. Always fun when I get to watch some NASCAR, and we get to see some great races this weekend, so I'm excited about that. And first, we got some news to start off with first here. Tommy, you've got the scoop on most of this. First, let's start off with Michael Waltrip. We got some news coming out for him.
Absolutely. Michael Waltrip will be making his Dancing with the Stars debut tonight at 8 p.m. That is on ABC. You can go in and tune in and watch Twinkle Toes himself show off. He's paired with Emma Salter tonight. Slater, I'm sorry, this season. And there will be 2 shows aired each week. The first show would be on Monday for those of you who are not familiar with Dancing with the Stars. First one's aired on Monday, and that will feature the dance routines and the judges' scores. And then the next episode on Tuesday at 8 p.m. will reveal the fan votes, and one of the couple contestants will be eliminated.
I think that might be the first time Michael Waltrip has ever been called Twinkle Toes.
I mean, that's probably one of the only things he hasn't been called. I mean,
probably.
He really fits the role, in my opinion. He's real bubbly personality. And
he's got the personality, but I don't know that he's got the dancing skills.
I mean, it's all in good fun. And actually, NASCAR.com, in this article that I read this morning about it, actually showed a little bit of the routine and practice of him and Emma. And, he actually looked to have a little bit of a rhythm. So that's kind of shocking. But I also read in the article, they said he is one of the only guys that can make Paul Menard laugh. And I think that might be true.
It could be. You come to think of it, I don't know that I've ever seen Paul Menard laugh. So
or even crack a smile for that.
Well, yeah. He's always got that like stone cold face that you never know if he's happy with the car, he's happy with life, if he's not happy. I don't know.
I think he even had that face when he was in Victory Lane at Indianapolis.
He probably did. I don't remember what he had when he was in Victory Lane, but he probably did.
Well, I watch Dancing with the Stars, and Michael.
Of course you do.
I do. I'm not afraid to admit that. I think it's a great show.
There's a lot of things you're not afraid to admit.
And if you watch the first episode, he's probably going to not do so well. But his dance partner is a babe. So lucky him, because have you ever seen that show, Garth?
I've watched an episode here or there. I can't help but see it sometimes when I'm at home because my mom watches it religiously.
That's why I watch it, because my mom watches it at home.
And, boys, fun fact for you real quick. Guess who was the last person from the racing community to join the show?
I don't know.
It was Elio Castroneves.
Oh, that's right.
And what hardware does he now have in his trophy case?
A mirror ball trophy.
And can Michael Waltrip be the second, make the racing community go 2 for 2 on Dancing with the Stars?
I don't think so. I don't think he's as nimble as Elio is. Elio's just got that athletic rhythm to him. Michael's just kind of awkward, and I see him being on there for personality only. I don't see him making it past 2 or 3 eliminations.
It really has nothing to do with talent on that show. It's basically if you have enough fan base, you can get through.
Michael Waltrip doesn't have that big of a fan base, though, at least compared to everybody else that's on the show, I don't think.
Yeah, that's right. But, the athletes always surprise you year in and year out because they really, especially the racing drivers, and I think that does great stuff for the sport because they really show the fans and the public that racing is a sport and those drivers are athletes and that they can compete just as good with the football players or whatnot there, and the lifting above their heads and stuff, and that takes tremendous strength.
Yeah, because it's not just sitting in a car and driving. There's a lot that more that goes into it.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't understand.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, he might surprise us. I'd be excited to see him do really well on that show. I'm just not sold on that he will do very well. But moving on, next item of business here. Corey LaJoie making his first Sprint Cup Series start this weekend at New Hampshire. LaJoie, for those of you that don't know, he is the 22-year-old son of Randy LaJoie, who was a two-time winner in what was then the NASCAR Busch Series, now the Nationwide Series. He is a development driver for Richard Petty Motorsports. And this is interesting because he's only made 2 starts in the Nationwide Series and 2 starts in the Truck Series. So not a lot of experience in the NASCAR national levels, and all of a sudden he will be in a Cup car in the number 77 Ford for Randy Humphrey Racing.
Garth, this kid's got a lot of talent.
He does.
He's a 5-time winner and runner-up in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series in the East in 2012 when he did that, and then this year he's been doing a little dabble in the Nationwide and Camping World Truck Series. He has 2 each in those. And then, he just has good talent. He's driving the Humphrey number 77 Ford in New Hampshire. And I made mention earlier, and we could be rushing the 8 ball here, but, is he going to be Marcus Ambrose replacement? Because
you're getting ahead of the game here because we haven't even mentioned that yet.
Right, and we'll bring that up here in a second. But Richard Petty Motorsports, Corey is the developmental driver for them, and as we'll mention a little bit if you haven't already known, Ambrose is set to leave. I think he made that statement last night, correct?
He made it over the weekend.
Okay.
I think it was Saturday when they officially announced that. And we actually have details on where he is going next year, so that coming up next. But I want to stay on the LaJoie topic here for a moment, and talk about what are his odds of making the race at New Hampshire? Because this Randy Humphrey team is very underfunded, and you look at who has made starts in this car. Dave Blaney's run 4 races so far this year. Nelson Piquet Jr. ran a race in it. And Joe Nemechek has run some races in it. But we say Dave Blaney for 4 races. I can remember at least 4 races where Dave Blaney was in this car and did not qualify for the race. This car does not have a lot of speed. We've seen that already this year. For the most part, it's been a start and park car. Does he honestly have a chance of making the race? And if he does, it's probably a start and park car anyway.
Well, even if it is like a start and park car, you still have a chance of at least getting something out of it. I mean, whether it's the experience of being behind the wheel, but you're not going to finish the race in a start and park car, are you?
No, not at all. You'll run about 20 laps and pull it into the garage. So, but that's the thing though. For someone with this much talent, do you really want their first race to be in a start and park car? That's not a good start to your Cup Series career. We've seen this with guys like Michael McDowell and Landon Castle, guys that have talent but get started with teams like this and don't really go anywhere. Landon Castle's still struggling with start and park teams. Michael McDowell is with a team that runs the full race, Levine Family Racing, but they're very underfunded and doesn't run very well. I don't want to see Corey LaJoie end up like that because Corey LaJoie's got a lot of talent, and I want to see him do well in NASCAR.
I don't think he will end up like that, specifically because he is a Richard Petty Motorsports development driver.
Landon Castle was a Hendrick development driver, though, and see how that ended up?
But have they had a spot like that open since then?
Yes.
Who?
That he came along right about the time the 5 car opened up, and they ended up taking Casey Kane for it. There's been a couple openings that Landon Castle could have slid into and didn't, and he ended up with just falling into the start and park rut.
I mean, but when you talk about Hendricks, they don't just want somebody like Corey LaJoie because, even with whatever happens, if he does go up to Richard Petty next year, he's still going to have that learning curve ahead of him. That's just the nature of the beast. And Hendricks, everybody wants to race for Hendricks, so he has people to pick from. Richard Petty doesn't always have that. And then so I think that, Hendricks hasn't brought Landon Castle up yet, basically because he hasn't been forced to yet. So, I mean, I would have picked Casey Kane a couple years ago over Landon Castle. But now look what Landon Castle's been doing. He's been running in the Nationwide Series every now and then. He's still making sure his skills are sharpened. And then now, if another spot happens, then maybe he'll get pulled up into the Hendricks car.
Development driver or not, if you do start and park as one of your first races, depending on how long you stay there, it's just going to suck. You're not going to want to do it anymore. You go out, run 20 laps, park it in the garage, and go home. Meanwhile, the big drivers with the big sponsors and the full team, they're going out there running the full 200 or more laps, whatever race it is, and they're going out there, they're having fun for the whole time. Start and park guy gets to go out, compete for the first 5 minutes, and then go watch the rest of the race on TV and back in his camper. If you do that long enough, you're not going to want to do it. And development driver or not, you're just going to want to give up and you won't want to continue on. So the way I see it is like you don't want to get into the Sprint Cup Series too soon. Like Chase Elliott, he's continuing with Nationwide even next year, and he's going to wait and move his way up like you should. You don't just jump to the Sprint Cup Series because you don't want to. It's kind of that sink or swim method. If you jump into the deep end, you have a 50-50 shot. So he could either come out of this a professional race car driver, or he could drown.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just hate to see him start off in this way, because starting off in this way is never a good thing. Let's move on here. We got about 3 or 4 minutes left in the segment here. And we still got to get to Marcus Ambrose. His plans for next year was announced over the weekend. He will not be returning to Richard Petty Motorsports next year in the number 9 car. Lots of people wondered where he was going. Right about that same time, Tim Cindric with Team Penske tweeted that they would have an announcement, a teleconference for the media on Monday regarding V8 SuperCar news. They had not made it a secret that they had wanted to get into V8 SuperCars next year, but didn't know if they could. Well, that teleconference happened earlier today, and as everyone was speculating, Marcus Ambrose is going back to Australia, driving a V8 SuperCar for Team Penske.
Great move. I mean, it's fantastic. Ambrose has been over in the NASCAR series or the community for the past 9 seasons, and the Nationwide Camping World Truck Series, and of course the Cup series. And he's earned 7 wins and 8 poles, and then 2 of those come from Watkins Glen in the Cup series. But if you look at his stats in the V8 series, from 2001 to 2005, he won 15 rounds in the V8 series, and that's 23% of the races that he's in. And then the other 46% are podiums. He's finished 30 races on the podium, which is first, second, or third. Mm-hmm. And, that's tremendous, and the consistency will be there. And, he's a road course driver, and instead of waiting for his time to shine 2 times a year, now he can be in there and compete week in, week out.
Mm-hmm.
At the V8 SuperCar Series, that's huge over in Australia. That would be the equivalent of like Grand Am or the Pirelli World Challenge cars here in the States. It's all road racing, and they're all V8s. You have Holdens and Ford Falcons over there that are Australian-made cars, and it's a lot of fun. Every road course, and if you're a road course driver especially, you don't do too well on ovals, you should have made this move long ago. I mean, why stick with something that you're going to only shine twice a year, like Tom said, when you could do it every race?
And I also left out in his stats column, he's also a 2-time 2003 and 2004 V8 SuperCars champion.
Mm-hmm.
And, now he's not going to go over there and get a slouch team. Penske's dabbling a foot in, and anything Penske's in, they come together quick.
Right.
Their IndyCar teams are just phenomenal, top-notch. Their NASCAR team is getting there, firing on all cylinders. Their Nationwide car's there. That 22 car has been the car to beat all season,
mm-hmm.
basically, besides Kyle Busch. And so, they're really getting in there. And they also are pairing with Jones. Dick Johnson, sorry, not Jones. And he's also no slouch to the series as well.
Definitely. Well, we wish Marcos the best of luck next year in V8 SuperCars as he returns to Australia. Stay with us around the break. We'll recap this weekend's Truck Series action from Chicago. And welcome back to the Pole Position, your first source for news and information in the world of NASCAR. Garth McMain's here alongside Tommy Poole and the unfortunately ever-present Andrew Moore.
You know what? I'm out of here.
Okay.
No, we like Andrew too much. He brings in some good insight.
That just reminded me of whenever they were doing the Chase Media Day broadcast from Chicago on Thursday, and Carl Edwards comes up to interview with whoever the two guys they had doing it for SiriusXM was, and he comes up there and he goes, "Okay, guys, sorry, I don't really ever do this, but you know, I heard what you guys said the other day, and you have me going out in the first round, so I'm sorry. Have a good day." And just walks off, and they're just like, "Okay." And then he comes back, and it was all a joke, but it was hilarious.
I mean, whoever has Carl Edwards going out in the first round probably needs that response anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if one of your family members has them going in there, you can still love them.
Yeah.
But just know that they're probably not firing on all cylinders when they say that.
Right. So let's get into talking about the truck race. Honestly, all three races from Chicago this weekend I was very excited about. The truck race, rain delayed from Friday night to Saturday evening after the nationwide race, and unfortunately, I only had to listen to it on the radio. I couldn't see it on TV because they put it on Fox Sports 2, which I don't get, but did get to listen to it. Sounded like a really exciting race. Kyle Busch led the majority of it, led the most laps in 66 laps total, beating out Matt Crafton. Had an exciting run to the finish, had led most of it, got caught back, I want to say it was about 5th on the final restart. Austin Dillon takes off with the lead. It looked like Austin Dillon was going to win the race, and Kyle Busch ends up catching him right at the end and just blows past him, and that was all she wrote. Kyle Busch definitely had the fastest truck in this race, and there really wasn't going to be any beating him.
Yeah, and, that's normal. Kyle may not be able to dominate in the Cup Series, but he can definitely dominate in the lower series. So
He's the king of the minors.
Yeah, you just stole Garth's quote there. Garth, you want to tell us about that quote?
Well, I was trying to save this until we were done with this recap, Andrew, but
sorry, I saw an opportunity and I took it.
This is why you ruin this show. But since we've already mentioned it, I heard an interesting quote from Kyle Busch over the weekend. He said, "I'm the king of the minors. I'll take that crown and wear it proudly." Since we've had this discussion in the past on the validity of Cup drivers coming to the Nationwide and Truck Series, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this.
I mean, he definitely hit it right on the head when he doesn't choke. And, that also we'll get to in the next segment, the Nationwide race. But, he's on top of his game down here, and I have a strong opinion about not letting those guys in, but at the end of the day, I mean, it is what it is. It helps on multiple aspects. I'm just one of those that I really don't like seeing, flipping on the tube and watching a nationwide race or a trucks race and seeing Kyle Busch or Keselowski dominating.
Mm-hmm.
And but and you bring up good points about that and bringing up the next gen of drivers, and that does help them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to stay up, they can stay up because in aspects like Saturday night, not Friday night because it did get delayed and then moved to Saturday. But, Saturday night was still a great race. And Sunday even shaped out to be a good one as well.
Well, I just think it's a classic case of bullying, if you ask me. Clearly, he can't perform well in the Sprint Cup Series, so he has to go down and pick on the young ones and beat them up. So,
I totally disagree with you. I mean, he can really perform kind of in the Cup Series. He's just not top tier like he is when he gets into the lower series. But
Exactly. He needs the Nationwide Series to make himself feel like a better driver.
Well, obviously he does, according to this quote. But really, honestly, I know you say this jokingly, and I know you say it in a bad way, but that really is what this kind of thing does. I heard Joey Logano talking earlier this year about how these last few years when he struggled in the Cup Series with Joe Gibbs Racing, how he was dominating in the Nationwide Series. He'd win almost every race he was entered in the Nationwide Series, and that's what kept him going those years. That's what made him feel like, okay, I still know how to drive. I still belong at least somewhere in NASCAR. So, I mean, Kyle Busch isn't doing that great right now in the Cup Series, so, I mean, you got to give him something, don't you?
I guess you could give him something. But him and Keselowski, they go down there and then they win. And now Kyle Busch is actually more dominant in the Nationwide Series. But just next year, maybe he'll go down to the K&N Pro Series and race there and be the champion of the babies.
I mean, Kyle Busch is the only Cup driver that normally drives in the Truck Series, though, other than Austin Dillon, who was brought down for the sponsors there in Chicagoland this weekend.
Well, Kyle and Brad kind of run the same amount of races in the Truck Series. Kyle doesn't run every race in the Truck Series. Right. He splits up that truck with Eric Jones, and I think Eric runs half the season, if I'm not mistaken. I know he at least runs all the non-companion races that aren't with the Cup races.
Correct, and he ran in Iowa. I actually went there over the summer in July, and that was when they were running with IndyCar, and I traveled with IndyCar a little bit, and went to the Iowa race and stayed for the truck race. That was a Saturday night, which was July 11th, and Eric Jones actually won that race, and he did really well. And see, that's another thing too, is Eric Jones is running with Kyle Busch and they're splitting the rides. It's taking away from Eric Jones, and Eric Jones obviously has that skill. He was pacing the field. He can run up there with the championship contenders.
Well, the reason Eric Jones can't run the full schedule, he's not 18 yet. He's 17. So NASCAR won't let him run on the bigger tracks. That's why he can't run the full schedule in that truck.
I mean, and that's the reason I brought that up, is I hate that rule. I mean, like it in the Cup Series, if you want to say that for the main series, go for it. But the whole reason of the trucks and the Nationwide Series is to bring up the younger kids and let them test, correct?
Yeah, well, they've become more lenient on that because I think it was only 2 years ago when they lightened that rule and they let 16 and 17-year-olds race in the Truck Series. Before that, you had to be 18 to get into any NASCAR National Series.
And I mean, MotoGP, for example, the international bike racing, that's huge overseas. They have 3 tiers. MotoGP, which is 1,000cc bikes. They have Moto2, which is 600cc bikes. And then they have the Moto3, which is 125cc bikes. And everybody in the Moto3 class, I think, I was flipping through the other day, and most of them are 15 or 16 years old. And they're running the entire series. But that's what it is. And then you bring up, they keep coming up. Marc Marquez comes in his rookie year and wins. He beats Jorge Lorenzo. He beats Valentino Rossi, which everybody says is the cream of the crop of MotoGP, and he comes in his rookie season and beats him. Why? Because he started when he was 15 and he stayed with it. And, I think that that's one way that you can keep your kids coming back better and raising the competition for the rising stars. And, I know that it's all those, they're in school and everything like that, but take it just like college athletes, they're missing like Thursday, Friday, and then sometimes Monday classes, or even when they play throughout the week, when bowl games come up, they're traveling everywhere. So they have tutors and stuff, and, I think that they can do the same thing. They need to equalize racing just like regular sports. And I see the point, but also I think if you're looking to make the series better, that's one way you can do it.
No, I completely agree with that, and I would be for that because there's a lot of really young, talented guys that you could put in the truck series. So, I agree that rule maybe should be lightened a little bit more, but it's there, and for the moment, that's all Eric Jones can run, which is unfortunate because the kid's got a lot of talent. And actually, fun fact, do you know how Kyle Busch discovered him?
How's that?
They were running a dirt race. I don't remember what dirt race it was, and I'd have to look that up. But Eric actually beat Kyle Busch in that race, and that's how Kyle discovered him and gave him a ride in the trucks.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's how a lot of people get discovered, is they end up racing with professionals, or professionals go when they see them and they watch them, and they kind of keep an eye on them throughout their younger racing careers. Like in Formula One, Sebastian Vettel was discovered by Michael Schumacher. Schumacher watched him race go-karts for years and thought, well, this guy's really good, and just kept an eye on him and kind of took him under his wing, and now look at him, 4-time F1 world champion. So if you're good enough to beat a professional driver at his own game, then yeah, you should have the right to have a team and race.
No, that's definitely how a lot of people are discovered. Everybody was discovered at one point via different things. Instantly that comes to mind is the commercial a while back with Austin Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
You had him tearing it up in the Legends series,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had that commentator going, Austin Dillon, he's going to be a name someday, and
Yeah.
that kind of sticks out. But, and as cheesy as that might sound, if that was scripted, that's the God honest truth. And,
Right.
That's how things happen like that.
Well, and then that's like the commercials they have for the Nationwide series. The names are made here commercials. I don't know if you've seen those. They've got the guys like Chase Elliott and Ty Dillon and Dylan Kwasniewski, those guys in there, and they'll show clips from their old days, and then they'll have them talking, and they'll go. People will be talking one day. They'll say, "Man, I knew Chase when he was in diapers, and look how he grew up fast," that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's these developmental series are definitely a good thing, and definitely we have a really good crop of drivers coming up right now. I don't think anybody would deny that. I think it's just definitely maybe a little more seat time for them.
And it's just the developmental series in anything is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an IndyCar guy, of
Mm-hmm.
course, but it's not just NASCAR this year. All the rookies have been sensational in almost any series.
Mm-hmm.
The Indy cars, the 500, you had Sage Karam come in, and he was a Ganassi developmental driver, which is a really good team in IndyCar. And he is 19 years of age, a month and a half older than me, goes out, everybody thinks, okay, well, he's just fit to fill the field of 33. Goes out every practice run that was not shortened by rain. He ran at least 100 laps. Every day. Went out there, turned 100 laps. Finished 8th in the Indianapolis 500. The kids are great.
500.
Absolutely. You look at some of the rookies in the field. Mikhail Aloshin. He was fantastic. Comes from Russia. Never raced on an oval before. Carlos Huertas. Never raced on an oval before. He won a race this year. It's just the kids who are growing up it's just fantastic. The classes that we have, and everything. You've got, like you said, Chase Elliott. He's come out of nowhere and won. Nobody would have thought that he would have even won one race this year.
Mm-hmm.
And here he is contending for the championship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nice because with NASCAR, it's not. This may be a stereotype, but it's kind of like a homegrown sport where everybody knows everybody because they're all kind of family in one way or another. And they're talking about, we knew Chase when he was in diapers. Well, now that you've associated with Chase with professional race car drivers, it was kind of you knew he was going to grow up and race like that. So you kind of have it in, since, like from the day you were born, that you're going to be a race car driver because this is how your family does it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but you also got to look at who's his dad. You know, Bill Elliott's his dad, and then the same thing goes for Ryan Blaney and
Or
guys
Dale
like
Earnhardt
that.
Jr.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, that'll do it for our talk on the truck race from Chicago. Stay with us around the corner, and we'll recap this weekend's nationwide action from Chicago. And welcome back to the Pole Position, your first source for news and information in the world of NASCAR. Okay, we talked trucks. What's there left to talk about? Isn't that the best race of the weekend?
Oh, absolutely not. Trucks race was good. So was all the other two. But let's bring up nationwide. Tight race in the points, and that continued to show in Chicago.
Definitely. Chase Elliott losing, I think, just a point, actually, to Regan Smith. He was 2 positions behind, but if I'm not mistaken, yes, Chase led 2 laps, which gave him a bonus point. So he only lost 1 point to Regan Smith here. Smith finishing 8th, Elliott finishing 10th. So very close battle there between teammates, and really, you've got a 2-horse race here coming down the stretch run of the season. Really, there's 3 guys left that I'm not sure I would count out yet, but they're not that close. I mean, the 9 and the 7 really have to have at least 1 race of problems for Ty Dillon, Elliott Sadler, and Brian Scott to get back in this championship race.
Yeah, I halfway agree with that. They can't be having what they had in Chicago because, you know, I'll just go ahead and say the standings. Elliott Sadler, who is 4th in points, finished 6th. Ty Dillon, who is 3rd, finished 7th. Regan Smith, who is 2nd in points, finished 8th. Brian Scott finished 9th. He's 5th in points. And then the leader, Chase Elliott, finished in 10th. So all 5 of them finished back to back to back to each other. And, you know, it's great racing. It made for an exciting race. But, yeah, they're going to need a little more widespread if the back 3 are wanting to make a move. Sorry about that. Ty Dillon is 40 points off. Elliott Sadler's 51, and Brian Scott is 56 points off of Elliott, and Regan Smith is 18 points off. He was 19 points headed in, and as you said, he made up 1 point, whole whopping 1 point.
And if he makes up 1 point per race for the rest of the year, Chase Elliott will be the champion. That's how few races we have left, and that's how big this point lead is. It's not huge, but if you're just making up 1 point a race, you're not going to catch Elliott. And that's the thing with these back 3, Dillon, Sadler, and Scott, is, like I said, the 9 and the 7 both have to have problems in at least 1 race and the remaining part of the season. I could see the 7 having problems. They've had a few races this year where they haven't been great, but the 9 has had a solid year all season long and haven't really had that many problems. I don't see the 9 having any problems for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but that all can change with the drop of a hat. You know, momentum is huge in racing, and we'll get into it next segment, but Brad Keselowski won. You know, so and guess who now has the momentum? And guess who had it earlier in the season? It was Jeff Gordon, and then now, is it starting to get switched? We'll talk about that a little later, but, you know, that's the big thing in racing is momentum, and it only take, you know, it could take a whole race weekend. It could take a lap. You know, it could take a pit stop. It could take anything. And, you know, but that's the quote that Chase Elliott said last week about regards of, you know, he's not too much pressure on him because he's just going to get in there and do what he can do. You know, he said that there's been so many championships in the past that have been lost due to a conservative mode. And, you know, and that's kind of how Kyle Busch lost the race, being conservative. And he said, you know,
that he wasn't conservative. That was his problem.
Right. He was just kind of racing along, and actually he was being conservative because he didn't really take a chance. You know, he went in and he put the tires on the car, and didn't he take a 4-tire stop?
Yeah, but I don't know that I would call that being conservative, because let's explain to the folks out there in case they didn't see the race. Kyle Busch dominated this race, led 141 laps in this race, absolutely by and far had the best car, was 2 miles ahead not literally, but way ahead, had much better car than his two closest competitors, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Larson. Last pit stop, last caution, everyone comes on pit road. Kyle Busch, having shown his cards, having shown how good of a car he had, knowing there wasn't much to do to make it better, takes 4 tires, thinking, why gamble? Why take a 2-tire stop when you've got the best car to begin with? The fact that he showed his hand and showed how good that he was, everyone else starts throwing Hail Marys on that last pit stop. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, 2-tire stops, no tire stops. Kyle Busch restarted that last restart with about 30 to go, something like that, in 16th. So he had a long way to go and not a lot of time to do it. And by the time he got through the majority of the pack, got up to 4th, 5th, that area, finished in 3rd. But by the time he got up to the top 5, Kevin Harvick was still 7 seconds in front of him and had checked out, and there was no way he was going to catch him. And that was his downfall, was the fact that that's at least what I think was his downfall, that he showed his cards so handily. If he'd been a little more conservative, he doesn't have to run 2nd, 3rd the whole race, but if he just holds about a 2-second lead or so for most of the race and gives these guys maybe a false hope that, hey, if I change something here on this last stop, maybe I can get a little bit better than him, and then on that last restart just blow away from him. That, I think, would have been the best option there. Kyle, though, is of that mindset. You got to go, go, go every lap, and I think that's his downfall a lot of the time when he doesn't win these races that he probably should have.
But see, the thing is he went ahead and he didn't gamble, like you said, and took the safe side by taking 4. Well, everybody else didn't take any or took 2 at the most.
There's no gambling to do, though, when you're in the lead.
Right, and that's what I was getting ready to say, is that just kind of falls under racing. And that also can haunt Chase Elliott because he can't control any of that. And that's where strategy comes in and is so crucial. He could come in, make a stop, be set to go, be leading this thing, be leading or been dominating the race. Then, he goes into pits. Most tracks, he'll fall about a lap down or something. As soon as he comes out, the leaders could be getting ready to go down on the apron. And the next thing you know, yellow comes out. And then they all get to pit under yellow, and then now he's screwed, know? And there's not a thing you can do as a driver, and that is just so heart-wrenching because you're sitting there in the cockpit, you've done everything you can do, crews on the walls done everything they can do, strategist planned it out perfect, and then, one little thing happens, and especially with the way that they throw in NASCAR, not bashing the system at all, but, yellows come out so easily, anything come off a car, a bag comes out of the stands, and the reason being is because the cars are so low and they're so technical. There's so many components to them, and because you've got the air filter, or you've got the radiators in the front, the coolers in the front, and anything covers those. That could end somebody's night big time.
Yeah, it's interesting how this stuff gets played out. I don't know. I don't know where to go with that. You kind of talk through that whole thing, and I don't know how to respond to that.
I know, man. That's just kind of how racing is, and you can go in there and do everything that you can do and do everything right, and it just come up short, and that's the nature of it.
Right.
It's like football. You can have a play drawn for everything, but all it takes is just one thing. Wind be off, quarterback throw it in the right spot if it was in a dome, and then outside, it comes up a fingertip short, and then that just lost the game. And that's the beauty of sports. That's what makes, in this case, racing so exciting, is because you don't know what's going to happen. And, Chase Elliott's got an 18-point lead right now, and it's far from over.
Now, let me ask you this. I remember that we pointed this out on Thursday's show, that Eric Almirola was in the 98 car in the nationwide race. Didn't have that great of a finish. I don't remember exactly what it was. You're looking it up here.
14th.
14th, so not great, but not bad either. got himself some good experience for Sunday, and we'll talk a little bit about his day on Sunday a little bit later, but do you still approve of that decision, and do you think that this will continue? Do you think he will run the rest of the season in that Nationwide car?
I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, it was great. You made mention it wasn't anything earth-shattering, but he started 10th and finished 14th. I mean, what more do you want from the guy?
Right.
He wouldn't. And I think he played it smart. He went out there and he wasn't in the mindset, hey, I want to run up front with the leaders. I want to pass this amount of people. He got in there and he just drove around. And that's what you need to do. You need to learn the track, learn what the cars are doing. They are similar in some ways. And, I mean, that really helped. And the results showed that on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of him doing this. And unfortunately, the results didn't show that. His race showed that, but we'll talk about that in the next segment. He did not have the day that he probably should have in the Cup race. But no, I do think this was a good idea. It definitely, like you said, he didn't go out and didn't really seem like he was trying to win the race, but it gave him some more seat time at Chicago, and I think that was the biggest thing on Sunday because he'd had that extra race in there. It gave him that extra seat time and let him know the track a little bit better. I think that was the biggest difference on Sunday, and I think that aids my point from a couple weeks ago when we were having the discussion of whether Cup drivers should be in Nationwide and trucks. It helps them in situations like this because it gives them more track time on tracks like this that they need to be better at.
And as you heard me in the last segment, I kind of am now coming around to that. Do I like it as much? No, but, I still think that it does bring... I now see your point. But in the same boat, my point is, of the people who can earn points from them, the person who led the most laps in the Nationwide race Saturday was Brian Scott with 6 laps. So then...
Yeah.
But... I mean, I just guess that's the nature of the beast, I mean, it makes it competitive, and that really does help. And it also makes, we may not see it on Saturday, but it makes what we see on Sunday. Because as, Eric Armarolo kind of showed, and then, of course, you look at the top 3 here, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, all Cup drivers, and look what they did on Sunday. And we'll get into that in the next segment as well, but it just kind of goes hand in hand. And it also shows how compatible these cars are as well, even with the trucks.
Right.
Because Kyle Busch won the trucks race. He dominated Saturday in the Nationwide race, finished 3rd in the Nationwide race, and then didn't do too shabby Sunday either.
Yeah, that's... The funny thing about that is they're really not that compatible. They're close, but they're not compatible. So I think that's a testament to a guy like Kyle Busch in the fact that he can run that well in all 3 vehicles in cars that really aren't that similar.
I mean, I kind of think that they're more compatible, but
Well,
I'm not saying that you change like 2 components or whatever. But the things that you do in the trucks, it's not a waste. They're not 3 different series. They really are a stepping stone. And the same thing for Indy Lights compared to the Indy cars. They're doing a new car this year for the Indy Lights, the FIL 15, and they're going to have paddle shifters now. So for the longest time they still had a lever, and Indy cars had the paddle shifters for 5-6 years now. So even though any series that you go in, you're gonna have hurdles to jump. But I still think that it kind of shows what you learn in the trucks. You can continue that, step up into the Nationwide, and then continue to build that, and then step up into the NASCAR and build off what you learned in the Nationwide series.
Well, it was interesting because I actually heard them. They asked Austin Dillon this after the truck race Saturday night. That can he take anything away from the truck race and take it to Sunday in the Cup race and maybe have a good run? And Austin said point blank, no, not really. There's not really anything you can take from this truck because they're so different other than you get more track time. on this track. He's like, other than that, there's really nothing else you can take away from this.
But that's like, jumping from a first story to the third floor, of a building, going from the ground lobby to the third floor right off the bat. But when you have, when you take the stairs, then you kind of get, what's on second floor, so like at a shopping mall. Whereas if you take the elevator from first to third, you really didn't gain what you saw on the second floor.
Right. Well, that'll do it for our nationwide recap. Excuse me. Stay with us around the corner, and we will recap the Cup race from this weekend in Chicago. And welcome back to the Pole Position, your first source for news and information in the world of NASCAR and motorsports. Garth and Tommy talking about the Cup race here, the myafibstory.com 400. I still think that's an awkward title. I like the use of myafibstory.com, but still think that's an awkward name for the race.
Well, it's just like the Brickyard 400. They've always got the longest name. I remember last year I interned with IMS Radio for that race, and we were sitting up in the pagoda before the race started in the morning, and our lady who did all the social media and everything was complaining about it because she couldn't put the whole title of the name in Twitter because it was more than 160 characters long.
Just call it the Brickyard 400.
Exactly.
Why does it need all the Crown Royal presents the... But here's what I think. If you're going to name this race myafibstory.com 400, just take off the .com. The .com is what makes it awkward. Just call it the myafibstory 400.
I mean, my old high school, Brownsburg, Indiana, we got a brand new football field the year after I left, and it is called the BillEstisFord.com field. And, as much as we like complaining about names of events, that's what pays the bills. And if they're willing to fork out that much money, we just, kind of grin, nod our heads, and shake their hands and go cash that check.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the race from yesterday. A lot happening in that race. First round of the newly reformatted chase. I've been hyped for this all season. I got even more hyped as the season went on. I'm hyped that we're in it now. It's so exciting. Chicago's a great place to start off the chase. We had some great racing yesterday, and there's a great battle for the lead right at the end. Brad Keselowski sneaking in there. You thought maybe Kyle Larson could get his first win. He and Harvick had a great battle going, would not let each other go side by side for about 5 laps. They opened the door just enough, though, when Keselowski got to him. He shot through the middle, got up to a second lead, and even after a restart after that, Larson couldn't get back to Keselowski. Keselowski ends up winning, second straight win, 5th of the year, and puts him firmly into the contender round. I want to talk about some controversy from yesterday, though. You didn't see the race, though, correct? So you probably did not see this. The final restart, after Keselowski had taken the lead, he and Larson were on the front row for the restart. I have not seen a replay for this. I don't know that there's a replay that exists of this, but there's been some controversy around this. Coming to the green, as they were both swerving around, cleaning off their tires, they made contact, and it gave Larson a tire rub, or a fender rub, on his left rear tire, which slowed him down for about the first lap until it fixed itself, and that gave Keselowski enough of a lead. And there was a lot of people saying that, well, maybe Keselowski did that on purpose. Is there any truth to that at all? Do you think he might have?
And to be honest with you, if you didn't bring that up, I would not have known about it. I've watched all the recaps. I listened to station after station on radio to get back up. So I do know what I'm talking about, everybody out there. But I've not heard that. And I've also listened to 2 or 3 interviews with Kyle Larson. I want to bring up some of his quotes too. But not once did he mention that. And not once did he even mention about his tire the tire rubbing and causing him to be slow that first lap.
Well, it was bad enough that the left rear smoked really bad for about a whole lap before it fixed itself. So was a pretty severe tire rub. It did fix itself, so he didn't have any major tire problems. But I was listening to a radio show last night, and there was a good portion of it for about 2 hours where there was people calling in, asking, giving scenarios, saying that they thought Keselowski had possibly done this on purpose. And it was funny because I heard them ask him about it after the race, and he actually kind of danced around the question, didn't really give an answer for it, just kind of said, well, Larson was swerving around a little, and he got down real close to me, and that's all he really said about it.
I mean, I think, and that's what us in the media, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We love stirring that pot, and we love doing all those what ifs and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot and everything. But the thing is when that's just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been so many incidents where that's happened. A couple that popped to mind is a while back in the 500, Roberto Guerrero starting front row. You've probably heard about this.
Mm-hmm.
He's on the pole position. They come out of the pits. He starts warming up his tires. Next thing you know, comes out of 2 and just shoots down the infield grass and hits the retaining wall. He's out before the green flag even came, And also, Danica Patrick a couple years ago in IndyCar at Homestead. She's driving. Actually, it may have been Chicagoland. I think she's had 2 different incidents at both of them. But anyhow, she comes in, she goes into the pits, was having a problem, came in, thought the problem was fixed, goes out on the warm-up lap, starts warming up the tires again, testing it,
Mm-hmm.
and then she kicks it sideways and almost hits the safety truck that had just fixed her coming around in 2, and then she makes a full lap. They're coming around to get back in position, and she spins again, and I mean, she's lucky she didn't hit that truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Juan Pablo Montoya in Daytona, the whole
Right.
jet dryer incident. But it's just the thing is, and especially with stock cars, I mean, they're so big and they're so heavy and they're hard to turn the way they are. And, there's moments like that. I really don't think that he would have done that. And I honestly wouldn't shed too much light on it as a driver either.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those parts, big deal you got with somebody a little bit, things happen, but look, you split them coming
Mm-hmm.
out of 2, I think it was, and then taking the lead. So, there was a lot of bigger, and especially you locked yourself into the chase or into the next round.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's bigger things to talk about than that.
Right. And, I mean, I don't think it was that big of a deal. I don't think he did it on purpose, but there was just so many people bringing that up that I thought it was worth bringing up and seeing your opinion on it. But, like I said, I don't think he would have really done that either. Jeff Gordon coming in second. Great run for him. Kind of quiet. Led a decent amount of laps in the middle part of the race, but kind of quieted down near the end and kind of snuck up in there on the final restart and got around Larson and Harvick and ended up in second. So a good run for him and still solidifying himself. There's a lot of people in the past week I heard Keselowski and Gordon being their final 2, like their top 2 guys in Homestead, and either one or the other winning the championship. So kind of solidifying themselves as that here at Chicago.
I do want to bring up the point real quick. In our predictions, who had Keselowski winning Chicagoland, Garth?
It wasn't
me.
you, was
that
it?
That would be me.
I had Harvick. I was close.
So, but that's the thing is, Gordon has finished. That's the second straight week that he has been runner-up to Keselowski,
Mm-hmm.
and he did decent. He led 26 laps. And he really never left the top 10, and that's going to get him far in this chase, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency, but the thing is I do not think you can get into the top 4. And if you do get into the top 4, and you're counting your lucky stars that you get in there based off points, then Gordon's going to need to keep finishing on the podium if he wants to get in by that. But knocking on the door in second 2 weeks in a row, and you got to think who we're talking about here. Jeff Gordon, a Hendricks car, he's going to find victory lane in these 10 races, and if he doesn't, I'm going to be shocked.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's talk about some guys that didn't do so well yesterday. Eric Almirola, I want to start off with. He's the biggest one. Had a great race going. made a great charge. Just under 100 laps to go. Got into the top 5 at one point. I think got up to 4th, maybe just to 5th. Settled in 6th, though, and had a really strong, really good, about 6th best car right there in the latter part of the race. Blows his engine with 35 to go. Had a solid 6th place run going. Had himself solidly probably 6th or 7th in the chase at very worst at the end of the race. Now he sits in 16th, 23 points off the 12th place driver, the next cutoff guy, which is Carl Edwards. Does he have to win at New Hampshire and or Dover, or is he out of this?
I don't think he's out of it, and he also led 2 laps.
Mm-hmm. He had a really good car.
I know he spent most of the day in the top 10 as well, and I don't think he really has to win, but he's going to need to repeat that show without the engine.
Right.
And I mean, it's so disheartening, not only for him, but for the crew too. When he blew up on lap 231, he radioed in and he said, "Guys, we blew up, guys. Push it back. Win the tire. Push it back. We blew up." And I mean, just like that too.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just so frustrating when you as a driver and you hear all the media saying, "Oh, he's first out for sure, he didn't stand a chance," and then you go in here and you've put all this work with the nationwide ride, and then you've also done so well on Sunday, and then now you just blew up and you find yourself, that's not the start he wanted. And I mean, I think he can make the chase, but he's going to have to be consistent, and he's going to have to be in the top 10. And we said that all along. That's not just now after we saw what he ran Sunday. We knew he was going to have to be good, and he knew that as well. All 16 of these drivers know that they're going to have to be at the top of their game for the next 9 races now. And, I mean, he's really realizing that that is not what they needed. What they needed was prior to lap 231. And that's another thing, too, is, you know, we touched base on it in the Nationwide Series. You can't control that. And that could very likely have ended, you know, his chase and his championship, his postseason life.
Well, the thing is, though, does he really need top 10s at this point, or as far behind as he is, does he really need to click off 2 top 5s in the next 2 races? With as far behind as he is, and think about who he's got to get around. Yeah, you got Greg Biffle and A.J. Allmendinger. I hate to say it, but they're probably more or less out after this round. But then you've got to get around Ryan Newman, who I think probably will make it out of this round. You got Carl Edwards, who has a very good chance of making it out of this round. And then you've got Casey Kane, who we thought might not make it past this round, but if he doesn't, he's got to drop back 2 spots as well. So you've got to have a lot of shuffling here for him to be able to actually get up and advance, and you've got some good drivers to get around. Ryan Newman, actually, even though he was 2 laps down at one point, ended up getting enough lucky dogs by the end of the race that he was back on the lead lap. Ryan Newman, though, had a good enough car Sunday that he was running. When Harvick came up to put him 2 laps down, Harvick and Larson were battling for the lead. Harvick got around Newman, but Newman stayed with them for about 15, 20 laps, raced them like he was racing them for the lead, had a good enough car to win that race. It was unfortunate he was 2 laps down, but had a good enough car for that. So you've really got some good cars to leapfrog, and I don't know that he can do it from as far back as he is.
Right, and you touched base on it a little bit, Greg Biffle. I mean, what was the thought process behind that? Friday in practice, it's, you know, the weather was coming, and you could tell, and it was a big sell. And most drivers got in there, and they went out and they posted their fast lap of qualifying trim, went in, thought what was going to stick, what they couldn't do better than, and then they spent the second half of practice, if you will, working on race setup. Greg Biffle went out there, and he was race setup mainly the whole time. And yes, it wasn't terrible. It was 20th is where he ended up starting. So it wasn't awful, but I'm sitting here thinking, when you're in, that is a move that you can do if you're locked in, if you've been really high up in points, and you more likely will make your way onto the chase, or even if you were at the end of last season when I was talking about, you win and you're in, that takes the pressure off. Those are the types of moves you do then, not when you're sitting there and you're needing every position you can get.
See, I agree with that, but at the same time, I think that when you're in the position he's in, you almost need to work on race setup. Qualifying doesn't matter as much, but you need to have a good car for the race.
I totally disagree because he started 20th and he finished 23rd. He
Well,
never
then
got
he
out
did.
of the 20s.
Well, then he didn't put together a good enough race package in practice. He needed more time to work on race setup. That'll about do it for this week's show. Tune in on Thursday for our preview of next weekend in New Hampshire. This has been the Pole Position.